Hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video. And in today's video I'm going to be predicting the Masvidal versus Diaz rematch. And so if you're new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do need a like video, and let's get straight into it. So of course this is the rematch. It's in boxing this time. It got rearranged a date, but we actually have it now, and it's not your conventional boxing prediction, but I always just like to do predictions for any fights that interest me, and to be fair, there's not loads of exhibition fights which really interest me with MMA fighters anymore. I feel like for the most part we've seen majority of the ones that are really going to intrigue me, but this is one which does. And I suppose just to speak about them both as fighters, a little introduction of them both. Masvidal is 35-17 with 16 KOs and 2 submissions, and Diaz is 0-1 in boxing and 22-13 with 4 KOs and 14 submissions in MMA. This fight's a 10-round fight in the light heavyweight division. Masvidal's last fight was a loss via unanimous decision versus Burns, and Diaz's last fight was a loss via unanimous decision versus Paul. They are both 39. Their first fight ended with Masvidal winning by TKO/doctor stoppage in round 3 back in 2019. And to speak a bit more about what I've just been saying, there was something on BoxRec saying that Masvidal had a boxing fight back in like 2005 and he won, but I didn't think I'd really wanted to mention that as a boxing fight for him. But yeah, MMA wise, both of them are just legends of the UFC, to be completely honest. They aren't always the ones that were going to be going in and looking amazingly technical and everything like that and winning titles and everything, but they were ones who always fought at the high level, had multiple different title shots, and just always brought entertainment, had their own just highlight moments in the UFC. And of course, they had their fight themselves. It was for the BMF title. It was shaping up as an excellent fight and was looking so good. And then the doctor stopped it, where it was a bad cut seemingly on the eye of Diaz, but Diaz seemed to want to continue. And so obviously the doctor didn't allow it, and that was controversial. And all the fans who were enjoying just such a good fight between the two of them weren't happy with that. So it makes sense as to why they are doing this boxing exhibition. There is that storyline there. I don't believe there is too much bad blood between the two of them. I never really know with Diaz and Masvidal, to be honest, who they like and who they dislike, to be fair. But there doesn't seem to be too much of a aggressive build-up in the lead-up to it. I think Diaz is just going a bit crazy in general, but I think he always just wants to do whatever he wants, which will full credit to him. Masvidal obviously hasn't won since that fight versus Diaz, I believe, being on a 4-fight losing streak since then, where Diaz won his last fight in the UFC versus Tony Ferguson, where he wasn't meant to fight Tony Ferguson, and then he did, and then it was quite a good win for him. I mean, it was Tony Ferguson at the point in his career at the moment where it seems like anybody can beat him, to be honest. But then obviously he went and fought Paul, and it was an interesting fight where Paul really did win unanimously. Diaz put it on him into the later rounds and into the last part of the fight, which you kind of expect him to do. He always does give his all, and he's very durable and tough and can take a punch. And other than that, there was definitely some boxing things where it's just like, is Masvidal just going to be able to capitalise on them and outfight him in the early parts of the fight, and Diaz have a little bit of success going into the latter part? We will have to wait and see. Obviously, they're both 39, so they're at the point where I'm still comfortable to see them fighting and doing exhibitions. There are certain fighters who have had exhibition fights, and I'm just not personally that comfortable watching it, because it's like you're like 50 and I just don't really see the point, and I don't think it's health-wise safe. I mean, Tyson getting back in the ring and everything like that. I mean, we just seen James Toney raise a Ruddock not too long ago, and Roy Jones Jr. versus Anthony Pettis, who's also on this card, which I'm going to speak about in a moment. Jones Jr. really didn't look very good in that, and so there is a point where I think there is a cut-off point, but I don't think they've quite reached that point yet, both of these guys. And I suppose also on this card, it's not a bad card, to be completely fair. I mean, there's a couple good fights. Garcia versus I've forgotten who he's fighting, but he's in a good fight. And then there's Daniel Jacobs versus Shane Mosley Jr., which is a good fight. And also, if I'm doing, an MMA type boxing breakdown, then I thought I might as well speak about Avia versus Pettis, in which I think Avia will win by unanimous decision. Pettis surprised me. Jones Jr. really didn't look good in that fight versus him, but I said that Pettis would win in my prediction for that fight, but he did look quite good. He had a nice high tight guard, was letting off nice shots and was distributing his shots quite nicely. The power wasn't really too much there, but it was nice clean boxing to be fair to him. And I just think Avia, he's been more active boxing wise and he's good on the front foot and can, I think, put Pettis on the back foot. And I still think there's vulnerabilities on Pettis on the back foot. I'm just not sure if he's still too clued up about how to defend himself boxing wise on the back foot. And I think that's where, in the end, the Veer is going to have success and just be able to wear him down like he does a lot of guys. I don't think he's going to be able to stop him, but like I say, unanimous decision sounds fair enough to me. And and then I don't really know what Pettis will go from there. And Avia probably will continue to have boxing fights. And it'd be interesting to see, financial wise, if he's making more money doing this or if he's making more money fighting on Misfits. I'm not too sure, but it probably is a bigger fight this for him than some of the guys he's fought on Misfits. But, nonetheless, it's still interesting. And then to go back to the main event, Masvidal as a fighter, I'm going to try and break them both down as fighters as much as I can and talk just kind of boxing wise about them. But obviously it's going to be a little bit difficult because of course we haven't really seen Masvidal in a boxing fight as of yet. He's very unpredictable though. I mean, he's relaxed at the same time, but yeah, he's very unpredictable. You never know what you're going to do. You could get a Ben Askren moment with him, and yeah, you never really fully know what to expect from him. Diaz possibly is a bit more one-dimensional than that Masvidal probably as a whole he is. But yeah, Masvidal is very unpredictable in and outside of the cage. He moves well. He can hurt opponents, and he did hurt Diaz in their first fight. He works well in close. I mean, it'd be interesting to see how much clinching and stuff like that there is. I'm always interested when MMA fighters shift over to boxing, how much kind of things like clinching and other aspects like that, which are so common in MMA, kind of move over to boxing, and if they are just playing such a big factor. He's got solid timing. He's got a nice overhand, a left overhand that he times nicely, and did do that multiple times in the first fight versus Diaz. And the way you throw it's a little bit deceiving and tricky. And so it's a nice shot to have for boxing. He's quite accurate in his work some of the time. He seems to improve throughout fights. At points, I think he can, if he gets hurt, obviously it's a whole different story, but he can be a bit more of a slower starter than perhaps Diaz is. And I think he does improve throughout if he's able to gain a rhythm. He's quite explosive. He can fight in close or at the mid range, on the front foot or the back foot. And like I say, I think in general he's got more punch slash shot variety than that of Diaz. Negatives about him, I mean, he's been hurt bad. He'd never been stopped before when they fought the first time, these guys, but then obviously what happened with Usman didn't has seemed to have quite a bad effect on him because obviously he got stopped badly versus Usman. Then against Burns he was hurt as well, and so he seemed to recover versus Burns, but it seems like his chin maybe not has gone, but I think there's definitely more vulnerabilities than there once was, which makes complete sense with the age. I don't think Diaz's chin is anything. I think he can get hurt as well. I think he's just very, very tough. But I think chin-wise, he can get hurt, Diaz, as well. He's probably willing to be on the back foot and probably going to let Diaz come onto the front foot and invite that pressure. He backs up in straight lines a lot of the time. Like I said, I think his movement is better, a lot better than Diaz is, but he does seem to back up in straight lines. He has a low guard, so does Diaz, and that's a typical MMA thing. Waits to be hit sometimes to then respond back, and Diaz will hit you and will hit you in nice combinations, and was doing so against Masvidal in that first fight, but Masvidal was waiting to kind of be hit at times. He's a bit of a less natural striker or puncher than that of Diaz, in my opinion. He can headhunt, so does Diaz. I think Diaz perhaps does go to the body a bit better than Masvidal, punching wise, because of course Masvidal's used to relying on them kicks to the body or the knees, and of course he can't do that. He can struggle to find his range a little bit at times, Masvidal. Against movers, I think he can struggle now, making changes when there's just a thing that's happening over and over again. I think Burns was catching him with the right over and over again, and Masvidal just wasn't really too fussed about making any changes. He stands quite tall, his head is on the line, similar to that of Diaz again. So that's why, in general, I think this is going to be an intriguing, entertaining fight, which a Diaz fight is always, and a Masvidal fight is always as well. To speak about Diaz as a fighter, of course he's tough, he's durable, he's come forward, he wants a fight. Everybody knows that. That is the trademark Diaz saying, and that's what has made him so entertaining throughout the years in the UFC. And I think, if you just go off the views in general, every single one of his highlights or full fights or anything just has so many views because of how entertaining and how much entertainment both the Diaz brothers have brought to the UFC. And so I don't really think it's ever a bad thing seeing them fight enough sport. Obviously, I wouldn't like to see them fighting when they're like 50, but for the moment, I still don't think it's a bad thing. I think they do bring that entertainment. And, I could say, oh, they get caught a lot with shots and it's probably not the best for their health. It's not, but I genuinely don't think they care about that at all. And Diaz, not to be horrible, but has been in enough wars now and been punched enough times in the head that I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing if it continues to happen for at least like another fight or something like that. Of course, he wants to let his hands go. He's quite accurate with his straight shots. His straight shot combinations can be quite nice, and he did seem to also go to the body relatively nicely versus Paul as well. So they are striking things which are good about him. Front foot, high pressure, picks his shots relatively nicely. Can be quite patient as well if he's allowed time to be. He's punishing when he gets you on the ropes / cage. Comfortable in bad positions. Can flip momentum which is something that's interesting about him, the fact that he can look so vulnerable at a time and then all of a sudden can flip the momentum. He's got good combinations, and so there is definitely things attacking wise which is nice to see about him, and so it's not all just negatives boxing wise about his last performance. And negatives wise, he can become uninterested and perhaps frustrated. I don't know. I think against Paul he was just really eager to not be shown as somebody who was weak against him. Obviously, he's got suffered a knockdown, so he couldn't really help that. But he just seemed uninterested in trying to play up to the crowd as though he was like not getting hurt or anything like that, and Paul wasn't doing anything. But you could tell that he was. But yeah, he does seem to become uninterested, and if he does that against Masvidal, then I don't know if Masvidal's going to punish him, but it's just a weird thing to have, and it does add another element to the fight. His gas tank, I don't know how good that will be. Like I said, I think he definitely came on better into the later fight against Paul, but I think he also was knackered at the same time. So I think this could be a bit of a slugfest if this goes into the later rounds. Like I say, a 10-round fight between the two of them is quite a lot of rounds between these guys. He's been in wars. He's got a low guard. He can be irresponsible. Perhaps becomes frustrated. Headhunts at points. Being hurt. Like I say, he's somebody as well that's been hurt quite a lot, but never really been stopped. He's hurt, but then just like I say, can come through it. Defensive movement and flat-footed. He's got pretty much zero defensive movement and is flat-footed, so he's very much just there to be hit. And yeah, very vulnerable to get hit. Not as powerful as, in my opinion, I think Masvidal is. He can force himself in a bit. Doesn't faint. Is there to be hit. Has a lack of counters. Lunges in sits on the ropes too long, against pressure. When Paul put on him in the first round, he just looked like he didn't have a clue what to do at all. He has a lack of a jab, can be timed, his reactions aren't anything crazy, he's very slow like I've mentioned. He's got quite wide hooks in the process as well, so it's something you can see coming. So, I'm not expecting anything too crazy from either of these guys, to be honest, boxing wise. Masvidal is the favourite for this fight. I think that Masvidal will win by unanimous decision. I think Masvidal will just be able to throw them more punches, catch Diaz when he puts him under pressure, find success through that, and then be able to win that way. And yeah, I still think it'll be interesting and entertaining, and Diaz will bring his own element, which I'm sure will be entertaining. Then who could go on to fight Masvidal? I think he probably, if he wins, will want to carry on boxing for at least one or two more fights. Just who he could fight, I've listed some names. They're just random names. He could go on to fight anybody the way that things are going. But of course, he has his own promotion as well, so I'm sure he's going to want to keep delivering and probably is going to want to keep fighting on that. McGregor, you never know what's going on with him at the moment. Perry, of course, he's fighting Paul, but even if he loses versus Paul, Perry versus Masvidal is not a bad fight. Pettis versus Avila, also on this card, like I said, the winner of that could fight Masvidal. It's not bad at all. Or Silver or Sonnen. They had a fight, wasn't very entertaining to be honest, but They're both boxing. They're older. Seems like Son and Masvidal have some sort of beef or something. So you never know, that could happen. But I'm just throwing out names out there. But yeah, that's it for today's video. I hope you did enjoy. Like if you need, like this, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.